Good evening or morning or afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. I am Madam Carmen and this is BDSM 101. Today, we're going to discuss some of my favorite impact toys. If you're enjoying the information and the lessons, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I appreciate you all's support. Now let's get into it. One being this particular paddle here. I'm not gonna go into too many details of like the materials because like I said, I want to keep it fun and simple for you guys. The materials can vary for various different types of toys. Like this particular paddle here can come in many different forms of material. One being wood and this one being made from obsidian material. As you can see that it's shiny, has a reflection. It gets a bit dirty. I always keep a towel handy, make sure, shine it up, buff it up, get the smears off of it. But yes, paddles come in range in different sizes, lengths. Handles can be different lengths. As you can see that this handle's a little bit longer. This is an old paddle that I got from my aunt when she was moving. I found this in her closet. I told her that I wanted it. She asked me what I was going to use it for. And I told her,
"Wouldn't you like to know, weather boy?"
No, honestly, I told her that I was gonna be using it for adult purposes, and she just kind of snickered a little bit. My family is pretty supportive of who I am and what I represent and the lifestyle that I so choose to live. So it's awesome to kind of have those like exchanges with my family, especially my aunt. It's cool for her to give me this and not think twice about like, what are you gonna do? You gonna be beating somebody? And I was like, maybe, consensually, of course. Paddles can be used in different areas of the world and not just BDSM and kink and fetish, but also in areas like fraternities, which was used as a device for hazing, which I think and believe that is illegal now, but I'm sure that they still practice that because I still see a lot of guys who were in frats still having their paddle hanging somewhere on their wall or placed somewhere in their house. Back in the day, paddles were also used in schools to punish and discipline children. Of course, this was consented by the parents. Parents allowed the teachers and principals to paddle and spank their children and discipline their children. Paddles were also used in certain military branches. This is a very interesting fact that I've learned, but paddles were pretty common devices to use as a form of torture and discipline. Behavioral correction as well. Needless to say, it has shown great honor in pain, punishment, and behavioral correction. Paddles often produce a thuddy sensation. So there's thuddy and then there's stingy. So you will hear those two terms, used throughout this video. I just want to make sure that people understand that thuddy is more of a thump, pressured, and not as stingy. Some paddles can produce a sting. Some toys and items that I'm going to be introducing can produce both, depending on the materials that they're made, the weight of them, and how they are being used. But in particular, commonly, paddles produce thud, a very pressured impact against the body. Other materials that paddles can be made of outside of this wood and obsidian are plastics. I've actually seen glass plugs, different forms of leather. Usually the heavier the paddle, the thuddier the sensation. Imagine me putting these paddles together like so and whopping them across your butt. Of course you can wrap something around here to make sure sturdiness, to ensure sturdiness when handling this particular device or these particular devices. But just imagine the weight of these paddles together versus them separately. The heavier the paddle, the more intense the thud. Oftentimes these paddles, depending on how intense they're used and how extreme that the impact play becomes, can produce body markings on the body. But before playing with these particular implements, it is important to, of course, what do we always talk about? Negotiate. Negotiate prior to play to ensure that everyone has consented to the use of these implements, as well as the intensity of how intense and how extreme the impact session can go. Some people enjoy the body markings because they signify those as trophies and awards to be able to take the impact, to reward themselves as a good bottom for being able to take such a heavy impact. There are also people who don't like body markings because they may produce a trigger or a trauma response, or they just don't like body markings on their body because of whatever their personal reasons are. Sometimes those reasons could include the markings taking longer to heal and their body being needed for work or other personal interests. Most paddles require a closer range to the body, not all, depending on how long the handles are. Some handles could be longer and would require you to be a little bit in distance of the body when it comes to utilizing the paddle. But most times when they are within this particular size, they are often used at a closer range to have a heavier impact, and we're not just swinging it all willy-nilly. I always suggest people use their impact toys with more rotation and more movement of the wrist and not just the arm. The arms possess strength and the wrists possess position. So this would be more so promoting the position of your target when you're using your wrist. Arms are more so the strength and the depth of the impact. So you can put those two together and make sure that you're hitting your target and the area that you want to hit, whether both cheeks, one cheek, whichever. You want to make sure that you are aware of your swing when you are playing with these particular toys. So it's best to also practice. You can practice on a bed, you can practice on a person if they consent to that. You can practice on yourself. Also, the impact can be increased. The intensity of the impact can be increased based on the different materials that are made with the paddle or on the paddle. Some paddles contain spikes, some paddles contain holes, and that makes the paddling and the impact all the more intense, all the more extreme, and all the more pleasurable to a masochist. Paddles provide such a localized sensation, meaning we know that when we're using this paddle and we're aiming with our wrist at our particular target, it'll be more localized, knowing that we're going to actually hit because of the closer the range too. We know that we're going to hit the area and the target that we are aiming for. I love a paddle. Paddles definitely are on my top 5 list. And these household items could be a form of a paddle. So for me here, I think I have a spatula. This can be used as a paddle. This is a household item. I also even have a roller here. This can also be used as a paddle. It also can be used as a massage implement as well, and a poker. It just depending on how much you use your imagination when you're trying to apply that pressure. I also have this fire hose. Yes, this is made from a real actual fire hose here. And I put some additional tape on this fire hose to uphold the integrity of its sturdiness. It originally had tape around it to give it this shape and to create a handle, but I used it so much. This was a very commonly used implement in my sessions and scenes that I had to basically re-uphold the sturdiness of the handle by adding my own tape. And I love this tape. This is duct tape. I love it because of the pattern. It gave it a whole different look. The original tape was black, So this gave it a whole different look, and I personalized it. If I really wanted to, I can add another layer of tape. The more tape, the sturdier this is. As you can see, the actual fibers from the actual fire hose are coming out of this. All you have to do to keep up the maintenance of this particular implement is probably just cutting this, or what one of my bottoms would probably do or suggest that I do is burn it to prevent them from loosening again. The other paddle that is my favorite is, I got so many toys on me, but another paddle that's my favorite is this book. I will say the type of book this is, but to not freak out or cause controversy on my video, we're just going to prevent that from, I'm just going to prevent the actual acknowledgement of what kind of book this is. But if you find this familiar, this style of book, then you should kind of have an idea of what kind of book it is. But you can use any book. This I got from a kink, I guess it was like a kinks consignment event where people were repurposing different types of material and selling different kinks equipment with, you know, their creative artistic ways. And they super glued a handle through the book. This also needs to be glued. As you can see, the book is kind of like falling apart, but this is because I've used it so much and I've had it for so long. I've probably had this for about almost 10 years. This is one of my favorite toys too. It's also a paddle, hence the handle. And because of how heavy it is very, very thuddy. I would say that it's even more thuddy. It's even thuddier than this paddle. I believe this paddle is a bit more stingy because of how thin it is in comparison to the book. That also makes a difference in when you're using paddles. Paint sticks and rulers, items I don't have right now on hand, also make for good paddles. Hopefully it has stimulated your sensory glands and you've gotten a little bit turned on and aroused by the sight of those particular items. If any of those entice you or tickle your fancy, definitely leave a comment below and let me know which ones you like. I will let you know if I remember. Some of the toys I've gotten, like I said, I don't exactly remember who I got them from or how, like when, like I remember when I got them, but like who I got them from and where I got them from. So just let me know, put a comment down below if you're very interested in any of those paddles, or even share with me your paddles that you actually have, types of materials that your paddles are made out of, or the makeshift paddles such as my spatula and my rolling pin here. Let me know what you have used as a paddle in your play. Now we're going to tackle the ye old implement that is very commonly used in impact play, and that is the flogger. So this is a flogger. It is made from leather, and it's leather from the top to the bottom. Sometimes handles could be made from some other material. I know that there is like maybe wood or some form of a strong heavy plastic that this leather is actually stitched on and glued on. I'm not 100% sure, but I love the stitching. I love the artwork. I love that it has a handle that I can hang it up on my rack with all of my other toys. But it's double. I have two of these, the other one's here. And these have been my favorite to use because they are heavy. The length of them, like I said, it's all about range. So because they're long like this, the tassels are long. We call them tassels or teles. And like when the tassels are long like this, you can aim at a longer range, at a farther range than you would with, you know, shorter tassels, a shorter tasseled flogger. I love this also because I love floggers also because not only can you swing like this, you can also do, you know, different wrist work moves, produce a different sensation. Also, this is also another sensation. Spinning it on someone's body like so, grazing it on their body, tickling them, moving it around. It's the variety of sensations that this item, this implement can produce is very extensive. And if you get really creative, you can definitely do some work and create very arousing and pleasurable sensations. Floggers can also be stingy and thuddy depending on the material. So I have this one. I would say that this one is a bit more stingy, but also there's a thud because of the weight. The weight can actually give you that thuddy feeling. All right, this flogger is also around the same length as my other leather flogger here. If you see that, like my flogger is just a little bit longer. The tassels on here are actually folded. So that probably provides a very different sensation, and they are suede. So the handle is leather, certified leather. It says it on its handle here. Same with the handle is actually made from. It could be literally wood or a very heavy plastic. And this is stitched together and then glued on the handle here. And I love this flogger because it is lighter. I love the color. Because some people may be a bit novice to impact play or any forms of kink, this is a great introductory toy to introduce someone into the lifestyle or into some play and exchange without it being too intimidating and too intense for them. I love this, that you can use it the same way I was showing you with my leather one here. Same. 2 floggers are being used, like I said, when you're using your wrist work here. This would be considered a Florentine flogging style. There's also the circular flogging style when you're using your wrist in a circular motion or moving your wrist in a circular motion. Both of them together, I can't do it because I'm in this particular corner here, but both of them together can produce a flogging style that we in the lifestyle would consider and call a Florentine. I would say that this little whippersnapper here would provide a much stingier sensation because it is light. The tails or the tassels are also cut thinner. This is faux leather or vegan leather. Same material as the handle. There is some little knots here. Will actually produce a wonderful stinging sensation. And I don't know if you can actually hear that, but yeah, this can probably get pretty stingy, more so than thuddy because it's not really that heavy. It's very light, but it also can be used very lightly. You don't necessarily have to use a flogger with a heavy hand. That's what I love about it. You can keep it light, you can go fast, you can go slow, you can be direct on your target, or you can kind of mix it up, hit both cheeks or whatever parts of the body that are safely able to be used by the flogger. I also have this flogger here. It's more of a sensation play flogger. All of impact play is a form of sensation play because that is what we're providing, is sensations. But this one in particular, hey, it goes with my outfit. But this one in particular is not only the suede tails or tassels, but some faux fur, some vegan fur tassels as well. I've had this one for quite a long time, so the white is kind of dingy. It is what it is. I still like it. It kind of still blends with the monochromatic look and style that it has. I've seen many different colors and versions of this particular paddle. I had an ex that has one that I believe is red and black. And we would use these when we played with and interacted with bottoms together. It was really cool. It was very aesthetically pleasing. But yeah, this is more of, like I said, sensation play. It is great for the novice or the newcomers to this lifestyle. It is shorter in length than my leather one here. So that means that it would be more of a closer range of contact when being used. You don't necessarily always just want to swing, like, you know, extend your arm out to swing. You want to make sure that when you're doing that, you're still using your wrist to help with your aim. Because sometimes this swinging could provide you with less control. You want to have as much control as possible to make sure you prevent any forms of abuse, any forms of pain, of unnecessary or unwanted pain, or the loss of your actual toy. You know, I've seen people actually just pretty much just throw it. You know, they have these handles on here that actually helps with maintaining the sense of security and control of your particular implement. So you may want to use that. It's not just for hanging up on your toy rack here. Floggers are very common staples in a kinkster's toy box. So just the amount that I've shown you, I even have more and different sizes, varieties, and materials. I just wanted to kind of keep it this simple. Like I said, this is simple and fun BDSM. So I wanted to make sure I introduce you guys to a nice little variety that you can have an idea of how these toys are being used. Floggers can range and with different materials as well. I've seen floggers made from metal chains. I've seen floggers made with feathers. I actually kind of have like a little feather flogger back there. All of the different materials, they range. I even have one that was made from what would we call it? Barbed wire, or what they call it, chicken wire. It's the wire that you use to make like a little chicken coop or whatnot. A friend of mine made that for me, especially made that for me, and also used different leftover pieces of like, I would believe it was leather, if I'm not mistaken, to give it a more aesthetically pleasing look and kind of even out the intensity of the wire, so it wouldn't just be all pain. There would be a little bit of comfort in there too, a little bit of cushion. So the floggers originate from their ancestor, if you will, which is called the cat of nine tails, or if you want to be funny, you can call it the nine tails cat. Dragon tails, which we will get into here shortly, as well as floggers. So I would always want people to understand that when you're using a flogger, the original one that was used, even in acts of torture, I've actually read that they would use the cat o' nine tails, and of course you guessed it, it had 9 tails. So this one probably has way more than 9, but this is a descendant. This is what, like, the cat o' nine tails has inspired different variations, sizes, materials of floggers to produce different sensations. That's why I love kink, because it's not just a monolith, if you will. It's not just one singular activity or one singular toy that can be used to produce a sensation. I just want to make sure I reiterate this, is the difference between the cat o' nine tails and floggers is the amount of tassels, tresses, or tails, whichever terminology that you want to use. Remember when I mentioned the whips, right? So the cat o' nine tails is a part of the whip family. One of the most important ways that you can keep in mind when you're trying to determine whether or not you want to produce a stingy sensation or a thuddy sensation or a mixture of both, remember that the more tails that a whip has, the thuddier the sensation. If it's a single tail, like a whip, it will produce a stingy sensation. It will be stingier than just the amount of tails that this has. I showed you guys the lighter one, and because these are thinner tails, they would produce a stingier sensation. But if it was just 1 or 2 of these tails, you'd think that it wouldn't produce any, like, a very intense impact, because you're thinking the more the merrier. But these could probably do some damage because they're singular, right? And you have to be a little bit more direct in your aim and your swing when using them. Henceforth, when people are using whips, like a bull whip, you have to have way better aim. This can be casually just tossed and swung with the flick of your wrist, whereas when you're using a bull whip, it will be more directed at your, and they'll be more directed at your target. Great way to take care of and extend the longevity of your toys is by making sure that you clean them according to the material that it is made from. So this is leather. You would never want to just douse this in water and get them all soaked. I would individually or grab a few like hairs and wipe them down, sanitize them, maybe use a Lysol wipe to sanitize these. I would never just douse this and get this extremely wet because it is made from real leather. It's important to also sanitize your toys because you never know what chemicals or materials that are used on the person's body. Someone could have certain bodily oils on, lotions, creams that they have, moisturize their body with, especially their butt. A lot of people use different oils on their butt to produce a more shinier target for us tops, but also to keep their skin moisturized. It also helps with the body marking process as well. But you want to make sure that once this hits that, there would be oil on this. So it's important to make sure that and that you are aware of what chemicals or body oils or lotions or creams that are used on the particular person's body. So you can move accordingly to how to properly and efficiently clean your toys. Let me get these out the way and we're going to talk about the next toy. A fave of mine as well, riding crop. This is very commonly used and outside of kink when you are a equestrian or horseback rider. Riding crops are most times used in the careers or lifestyles of people who ride animals, horses, bulls, etc. This is a disciplinary or behavioral correcting implement for horses. It helps, giddy them up. So we, of course, adopted it and adapted it to our lifestyle of BDSM and kink, and now we're giddying up humans. So I love this particular riding crop. It is made from, I believe, real leather. I think this is actually faux leather, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So this one is actually made from vegan leather. The brand is Jack. I believe someone gifted me this, but it's a short handle. Some riding crops actually come with longer, extended handles. Most original riding crops are longer handled. This is just a plastic handle here, and this is also plastic. I always want to make sure that I remind people that plastic, no matter how hard it is, may not always be durable and may not always ensure longevity with your toys. The amount of riding crops that I have ran through, I've lost count. I think this is probably like my 8th one.
Damn!
And I hardly ever use it. I want to make sure that I ensure that I iterate to people when they are using riding crops this is where the impact is being produced from. Of course, we have our aim and our swing, but I want people to understand that this can produce a very stingy sensation when used with more wrist work than muscle. So you can do this all day long, but you're going to wear out your toy a little bit faster. So I always suggest people to use and focus on what this is being aimed at. If this is being aimed on the arm here, I can hit it like this and I will get a much heavier impact, but I can also use my wrist. I don't have to swing my arm. I can just use my wrist and it will produce it would produce a much stingier sensation. I want to also make sure that I add that not only do we need to be more cognizant of our swing, our aim, as well as the amount of muscle that we use in our swing, but also our endurance. I'm not going to tell you how many times I've been worn out or my arms have felt like noodles after a impact scene. It is very important for us to be very aware of our stamina, of how much endurance as a top you can provide and you can produce when you are topping. It may not be a lot. It may be a lot, but make sure that you get your breath work in and get your breathing right. It's not only the breath work and the breathing and preparation for a session is not just only for the bottom, but also the top. The top needs some love too. Coming from a top, they need some love. Coming from a dom, they need some love. They need some attention. After a session, most times, especially for an impact session, once I've provided the aftercare for my bottom or my submissive, I also request that I receive aftercare. A lot of times that's massaging my hands, massaging my arms, helping recirculate my body parts too as well, the ones that were actually putting in the work. Another implement that we often use, more commonly in the kink and BDSM lifestyle, are our hands. These 10 fingers or 8 fingers, 2 thumbs, however you want to define define your hands and your fingers. But this particular implement is one of the most common ones and one of the safer ones. Even though implements can be used safely, ethically, and consensually, hands also are great use for impact play, because we can definitely, there's no middleman. So when we're using implements, we're using our hands to help direct those implements. Without an implement and our hands being the implement, you have more of a range that you can gauge. So you can be able to gauge the intensity of the impact yourself based off of what your hand feels, the strength of your swing, as well as your aim. It can be more directed. Often used by spankos when they want to put their bottom or submissive over their knee. It is more commonly used to do those over the knee spanks. It is also a great starter for the novice or the newbies within the lifestyle to utilize their hand to better gauge all of the things I mentioned earlier: the impact, the sensation, the intensity, the range, all of those things. When I first started, I started with using my hand as my singular implement. Before I had any other implements, I used my hand, and I often use it more often than implements during exchanges because it's literally right here. It's attached to me. I don't have to look for something. It's very convenient to be able to utilize your hands because you can use them in spaces and places that you may not be able to take your toys. Like, say for instance, you have a sub or a brat or a bottom that has a brat attack. Someone that needs a little bit of behavioral correction and some discipline and some punishment. You can pull them over on the side of the road, put them over your knee and go at it. You can take them to the bathroom at a restaurant or a club or a space and go at it with hand. This is all consensually, of course, but it is way more convenient than having to take a flogger or a riding crop with you everywhere. Hands are also great to use when we're doing body temperature checks. Because we're using different implements to inflict those impacts and those sensations that could inflame and cause those particular areas that you're using them on, most likely the bottom, your booty, your butt, to have a much more heated sensation, and can, like I said, cause different body markings, can redden that area. And you want to make sure that you do a body temperature check. So you're rubbing and massaging and caressing those areas and helping ensure consistent circulation throughout the body to those particular areas. Another benefit in using your hand is gaining tolerance and learning to gauge that tolerance of your bottom or your submissive, understanding what they can tolerate. If they are new, if this is your first time playing, you can gauge what they can tolerate with your hand. If you're hitting heavy and you're getting heavier, you're like, I think you may be ready for a paddle, or you may be ready for a flogger. Any of those could help. And the hand does not have to be heavy. It can be light. And also you can incorporate many other sensations throughout the play outside of just spanking and slapping those particular areas, because I know we do face slapping too as a form of impact play. But you can also do grabbing with the nails, digging nails or scratching. You can use your hands for other things, rubbing, tickling, grazing, using your nails, particularly using your fingertips, using your whole particular hand and your palm. All of those things can be intertwined and incorporated in the play as long as it's consented and negotiated. As I mentioned, that face slapping is a form of impact play. Impact play is not just subjected to the buttocks. You can use it on the back of your thigh. I've seen people perform impact play on breast or chest areas, arms. Those are great areas to be able to explore different pain thresholds and explore what you as a bottom could tolerate. Keep in mind that the possibility of exploring those areas are up to the bottom and what they are willing and interested and desire seeking. Spanking can also be used in between using other implements. So when you are using your flogger and your arm kind of gets a little bit tired, just go ahead and start using the slaps on the hand. You can even, if they like it, enjoy punching. Punching is way more thuddier than slapping. Also keep in mind open hand or open finger, open palm, closed palm. All of those help. They all have a different sensation. It is important for you and your bottom to explore those various sensations and see what's right and aligns with both of you guys. Maybe all of them, maybe they can only tolerate the open hand for such a short time frame. Maybe they can tolerate more fist punches to the butt. Just depends on what is comfortable for them. Keep in mind, the location of the spanks also may determine the toleration of these particular sensations. So they could take the hand to the butt all day long, but only take a few seconds of face slaps and not even as intense. Not something that's whiplashing them or throwing off their spinal lining or any of those different things. This is more of a consensual slapping, face slapping. We want to make sure that when we are participating in face slapping that we avoid the ear area. Ear is connected to your equilibrium. A lot of times people are not aware of that, so that is really important for people to understand that the auditory part of your body, which is your ear, is connected to your equilibrium. So if you slap somebody in the ear, you may throw off their actual balance, whether they're sitting or standing. One of the things that I suggest when we're using our hands is mixing it up. You can use both hands, going above, making it seem like it's a drumming movement, upper hand, and being able to lift those butt cheeks up if you're using your hands on the bottom, shaking, imagine this was a butt. But shaking and trembling, and then also incorporating other forms of sensation in between those forms of impacts or butt slaps or spankings. All of that could definitely produce a subspace. If it's consistent, if it's heavy enough, if it's more on a specific focal point, if you're consistently on the bottom and you have a specific pattern going along, that pattern can produce a subspace. Like I said, in my subspace breakdown, that is not always the focus when we are playing and exchanging, but it's a great added bonus. Using the hands is a great time to get creative. That is the key to using hands. You can use hands, fist, fingers. All of this provides a different sensation, as I mentioned before. So get creative with it. Last but not least, we're going to discuss these dragon tails. This is actually a form of a whip. Before I even get into my little dragon tail here, this is a form of a whip. This is a 2-tail whip. Remember we talked about cat o' nine tails, how they have 9 tails. This is way more stingier. Remember I mentioned using the lighter flogger here, where I kind of gave you an example that, you know, utilizing these 2 tassels versus using all of these tassels can produce a more stingier sensation with these 2 tails. This is a dragon tail. It is a dragon tail because of the shape of it. This one was actually made by someone locally in Houston. Not really sure the name of their company, but this handle is wooden, and they painted it with it looks like spray paint. I love the color. It's pink, and it's metallic pink with a shimmer that would match the material of the tail, which is a faux leather, as you see here. But this right here kind of give me that shape of my fire hose paddle here. But this is way more stingier because of the point, and these can be a lot longer. Usually a lot of times dragon tails are way significantly longer. This one was a smaller one because I wanted to just try it out before I actually started diving and delving into these particular types of implements. So this is one of my faves as well. I want to thank you guys for coming and joining me in my explanation of my different toys and implements that I use in the form of sensation play that we consider impact play. And till next time, put some consent on it, and I'll see you next time.